We are now being joined by retired Flight Lieutenant Terry Ajobena to look at the security matter. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
December countdown starts today, 1st of December, given to the troops fighting the insurgency in Nigeria's northeast region. We've actually seen a spill into other parts. So, for instance, Kano State and a couple of other bombings. Looking at how the military has been able to rout and reclaim some of these territories from the insurgents, taking down their flags, bringing back the green and white flag of Nigeria and back in these communities. We have seen a new dimension now from the terrorists. Would you say, from the new development and new tactics employed by these terrorists, that's some form of success leading up to this deadline?
First off, I think we need to address the issue of the deadline. I thought that we probably might have learned a little from the past. And if you recall, there was a time that when one of the defense chiefs gave a deadline for which they had promised that they would root out the Boko Haram threats from the northeast. Unfortunately, that deadline was surpassed and nothing exactly came out of that. I'm not too certain the kind of counsel that the president got in fixing the deadline that he set for the fight. I would have been a lot more cautious, and as we can see, I think even the president himself has become very cautious about the dates that the deadline had given. That being said, yeah, we do recognize that there have been certain successes as far as the fight is concerned, partly due to the strategy that has been put in place. But I think there's still one or two things that I see that are fundamentally, I would call a problem. The first is, I don't think we've clearly made that distinction between the insurgency aspect of this fight and then the nipping the terrorism or fighting or combating terrorism on the other hand. Now, we've all lumped everything together and say, okay, this is all terrorism. Now, I think we should properly delineate, have the military, which is what they are typically doing in the northeast, combating the insurgent threat. So they are carrying out various counter-insurgency operations, as we have seen and as we have heard. But also, we should identify clearly that when it comes to countering terrorism, and this is away from the front, that role falls squarely on, or should be driven largely by the SSS, the Department for State Security. Now that needs to be clearly done, and these various agencies need to be empowered to undertake that fight, because you cannot have the army responding to terrorist threats that has been observed in some market somewhere or some church somewhere. That's not what the military is there for. Yes, we do provide a level of internal security assistance and all of that. It is part of the functions of the military, but then it's not a primary function, and we should not dissipate or allow the military dissipate itself in taking up the fight when it comes to the urban aspect of how terrorism is being perpetrated in the country.
You know, when you talk about that, we do know that in other climes where they've had sudden occurrences that they're not used to, they've had to go set up agencies specialized, maybe pull from all the others and create them into an agency.
Like task forces, yeah.
Like the question now will be, do we need to set up an agency? Because the DSS has its own primary assignment, so to speak. And as you said, the military has its own primary assignment. Yeah. Do we need another agency, maybe like a task force, but that is equipped for this asymmetrical warfare, as your colleagues have called it? Yeah. Do we need to set up an agency, and how would they function?
I'll be very cautious in trying to set up another agency because they do come with issues. I think what we need to first do is review the existing assets we have to combat this. The various agencies that have roles and responsibilities in the asymmetric aspect of this fight, we need to look at them and really see, are they competent? Do they have issues or challenges when it comes to being equipped for the fight? And then based on that, we can begin to look at, I would first want to look at the route of setting up task forces. You can have a super task force. Again, it should be driven by the agency or an agency that you have identified whose primary responsibility it is to ensure internal security. You know, so those are the things. In the US, this model has been adopted when it comes to, they've come up with these special task forces when the drug trade in Florida becomes so uncontrollable. They didn't go out to set up an agency per se, but they set up a multi-task force and drafted personnel from different agencies. They came together and they recorded quite a lot of success in that fight. You know, it's to the extent that it's the same model is being simulated in the California axis. You know, so we could do something like that.
When they had that terror attack, that was when the Homeland Security became more strengthened.
Exactly. Now that again, you see, even at that, there was a debate in the US as to whether, till today, there are many people who feel that creating that super ministry or department, the Department for Homeland Security, some people think it's a mistake, because what was really one of the big lessons of the 9/11, which was what gave birth to that department, was there was a lack of collaboration, no information sharing, no intelligence sharing. Everybody was operating in silos, and for that reason, everybody thought, okay, if you bring all these many agencies, I think about 17 of them or so, together, you can achieve that. But there are other ways to enhance collaboration between agencies. And those are, again, like I said, we might need to look at the entire picture. And this is what I expect should be going on at the highest level where these issues are being discussed.
You know, looking at the entire picture, what comes to mind here when we talk about collaboration? First of all, let's go into the theater of war.
Yeah.
There must be something that we're not getting. There must be something that we're not getting right. You know, sometimes there's also this culture of silence from the people in the theater of war, especially when you're still in service. But for some individuals like you and a couple of other people, they'll be getting some vibes and feelings from friends, people. What do you think is happening? Because we have seen some kind of show of force and some kind of support from the new leaders there. And the command center has also been moved to the northeast. But what do you think is happening, maybe a disconnect, if there is any, that we haven't actually seen some big success so far?
Okay. Again, there's just how much I can't say in a forum like this. However, I will say this. I think we've come to a level or to a point where we must begin to tell ourselves the truth. There were those who were critical of the president when, especially when he began to paint the real picture of what is happening outside. And I was one of those that was quite critical of that move. But I see some sense in that. The truth is, one of the biggest problems you would have is when you start to tell yourself, when you start to lie to yourself. You know, there are issues, and those issues must be confronted. The first thing, and it's common, it's what you hear, is the vibe, like you said, you get. And there seems to be some kind of disconnect till date. You know, yes, there's been efforts to breach that gap, but you are still having challenges with troop strength. For example, you are tasking fighting units, say a battalion, you are tasking a battalion to undertake a task, and the battalion is not even having the resources of a company. You understand? So a battalion that should have 750 men probably be having 200, 300 men. Equipment would probably even be lesser than what you would expect from a battalion. Yet you are assigning him, or you are assigning that battalion the task of a battalion. I mean, at some point...
Of a company?
Yes, no, of a battalion, because the battalion is larger than a company.
No, you say the battalion is given a task.
Of a, you're assigning, it's an appropriate task for a battalion.
Okay, good, because a battalion is bigger than a company.
Yes, but then the resources, both human, equipment-wise, weapon-wise, is the size of a company, which is smaller. So what you have is you are stretching the men on the ground. And the truth about it is we are probably recording a lot more losses than we are probably ever going to read on the pages of the papers or that we're going to hear from the news. And these are realities. I was talking to somebody was asking me, can we paint a picture of this kind of figures we are looking at? And I said, listen, I can tell you that depending on the rank of an officer that is killed on the front, for every officer that is killed, I can put an estimate of how many other soldiers have been killed. For example, if you kill a captain in the front, who is the rank of a company commander, you are talking about, as fair estimates, maybe another 50 people might have been killed. If you kill a lieutenant colonel, who is of the status of a battalion commander, you have killed hundreds. Before you will get to the battalion commander, likely, I mean, these are assumptions, but I mean, that's the kind of impression that you get. So if you want to have a fair estimate on the numbers or the losses we have suffered, that should give you, or that should paint a picture for you. Now, this is what I think. I know that efforts have been made. And the truth about battle is, sometimes you have force multipliers. When you have the Air Force in support of the army on ground, providing close air support, or what we call sometimes soften the ground before the infantry moves in or before the foot soldiers move in, it goes a long way. Now, when you are having the Air Force not flying as much sorties as they need to fly, either as a result of lack of equipment or not having the right equipment or platforms to use, what you are doing is you are diminishing the capacity of the entire fighting troop to be able to win this battle. Yes, we have been pushing, and I must commend the military for that. Within the limits of the resources that they have, we've been able to push and take back some of these territories. But you see, part of the problem is, right now, one of the challenges we are facing in the front is we are losing a lot more soldiers to things like IEDs. Because you chase these people away, and they've laid up mines, they've set up IEDs here and there, and next first thing you're hearing is a vehicle has been detonated, 6 people have been killed. Almost on a regular basis, sometimes daily basis, you are getting those types of reports. So we need to have a real critical look at this fight. And I believe that at my level, it will be very difficult for me to prescribe detailed solutions, but I believe that we have the competence in the generals and the service personnel that we do have. Have a critical look and let's tell ourselves the truth and say, what do we need to win this fight? I tell you something. As you have seen globally, no single country, if you are fighting terrorism, no single country can take on the terrorist challenge on its own. We've become a global village. Now, it's been determined that Boko Haram, as we speak, their center of gravity is in their ability to move. They have platforms that can move their weapons. They can stage their weapons on their vehicles. They can move personnel very quickly over long distances. Where are they getting these platforms from? It means they are being resourced from somewhere. And we need to look at, a lot of times, I can dare say that that resource is hardly coming in from this country or routing its way from this country into that theater.
So we're talking about sponsors now.
Exactly.
Assistance
exactly.
from the outside.
Exactly. So we're going to need assistance, and we are going to have to approach this diplomatically. We're going to have to approach this, strengthen the ties we have been trying to build with our neighbors, all their communication lines. We have to see how we can effectively terminate them, their logistic lines, all of those things. We must find a way. It has to be an all-round thing, and we should not be ashamed to cry for help. I don't buy into that idea that the Nigerian army or the Nigerian military is one very large or great force and we've achieved this level of victory in the past in various campaigns and all of that. No. If we are really going to succeed in this fight, I tell you, we need to cry out. The international community must take an interest. There's a responsibility to make the international community see why they must focus on this region.